Welcome to my new video based on the Matrix simulation theory. This is based on the Matrix theory of what the film shows of machines being in control of the simulation. It's not based on aliens or humans of the future controlling it. This is based on the film, The Matrix and the Animatrix, where, as you know, the movies show that machines are in control of the simulation. So this is where I'm going to take this theory. A good question to ask is why is Keanu Reeves, aka Neo, in the 20th century in The Dream? Morpheus explains in the film that it's close to the year 3000 in the real world, in the unplugged world. And the question is it to throw Neo off because he wouldn't believe the Matrix exists with the technology which exists in the late 20th century? It's the example of going in a time machine back to the medieval era or the Victorian era and showing people there an iPhone. You know, they'd be skeptical and shocked to the iPhone's existence because nothing like that existed, obviously, then. It's no different to us now in the 21st century being told we're plugged in a dream simulation because of the technology we've got around today. You know, like Xbox Ones and PlayStation 4s, there are simulated games on there, but the graphics don't compare to, you know, what would be a Matrix simulation, which basically would be a neural-based interactive dream world, which the Matrix is. But as a recap, the question is, why is Keanu Reeves, aka Neo, and everybody around him in the 20th century in The Dream? And as I said, to me it's to throw him off, to make him skeptical to its existence. And as you see when he's in the construct on the scene with Morpheus on the film, and is put into that training construct, he can't believe it's real.
This is the construct. It's our loading program. We can load anything from clothing to equipment, weapons, training simulations, anything we need.
Right now, we're inside a computer program?
Is it really so hard to believe? Your clothes are different, the plugs in your arms and head are gone. Your hair has changed. Your appearance now is what we call residual self-image. It is the mental projection of your digital self.
This isn't real.
And that's based on because of the technology had around in the 20th century in The Dream. It's nowhere near what, you know, the graphics are on in the 20th century. So there's a reason why the machine world put humanity into the 20th century, 21st century on that film, The Matrix. And that, in my opinion, that's to throw people off. Based on neuroscience, which is neurons in your brain. Basically, there are electrical signals interpreted by your brain, no different to reality, where everything we taste, touch and smell, what our neurons in our brain are telling us. So every time we smell something, every time we touch something, every time what we see, it's all senses for our neurons in our brain. Now, the Matrix is a plugged-in control dream where you're in a coma-type state dream, a continuous dream where you can't wake up. And no different to reality, everything you taste, touch, sense and smell are electrical signals in the brain. In the simulation,
your appearance now is what we call residual self-image. It is the mental projection of your digital self.
This isn't real.
What is real? How do you define real? If you're talking about what you can feel, what you can smell, what you can taste and see, then real is simply electrical signals interpreted by your brain.
It's basically through the plug in the back of the heads of the people, as seen in the Matrix film, where all the signals are coming from, in that coma-type state dream. And in that dream, everything, no different to real life, everything that you touch, taste, sense and smell and see is neurons in your brain in that dream simulation, telling you what you're feeling and touching. Therefore, how will we know the difference between the dream world and the real world if that's the case? As Morpheus asks Neo, he asks, have you ever had a dream that you thought was so real? What if you couldn't wake from that dream? How would you know the difference between the real world and the dream world?
Have you ever had a dream, Neo, that you were so sure was real? What if you were unable to wake from that dream? How would you know the difference between the dream world and the real world?
This can't be.
Be what? Be real?
If we're in a controlled simulation dream and it feels real, that we wouldn't know we're in a dream simulation. It's a good question, because if we're plugged into a simulation in a dream based on a neurointeractive simulation where everything feels real, how do we know the difference between the dream world and the real world? You know, when you have a dream, sometimes you feel things and you touch things in that dream or smell things, and it feels so real that you can't tell the difference between the dream world and the real world until you wake up. Well, the Matrix is a continuous dream, what feels like the real life of a living reality. So the question is, how would we know the difference between the dream world and the real world, if we're in the Matrix or not? Also, Morpheus explains to Neo, you're a slave, Neo. And people today obviously feel like slaves to work in debt. You know, we work shifts, we're in debt, etc. And it makes you wonder the connection to as to why Morpheus tells Neo you're a slave, when it feels like humanity is enslaved itself in the 21st century.
It is the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth.
What truth?
That you are a slave, Neo. Like everyone else, you were born into bondage, born into a prison that you cannot smell or taste or touch. A prison for your mind.
Bioelectrics is another interesting thing tied to the Matrix film. Basically, electrical currents produced by the body from the brain and the heart. In the film, as you see, everybody's plugged into that dream simulation, and what science actually says in real life is our bodies produce bioelectrics. From the brain to the heart, you know, we're actually producing electric currents. And Morpheus explains in the Matrix film that people are plugged in, and the bioelectrics of the human body being plugged into that simulation produce electric to keep the machine world alive, because they can't use solar power because of Operation Darkstorm, where the skies would spray with black smoke. So the machines work. The machine world, they basically, as the Animatrix explains, the machine world salvaged the human bodies to power the Matrix by plugging humans into the simulation, perceiving it to be the real world. But yeah, it's an interesting point, because the bioelectrics our bodies produce a few times that by 7 billion people plugged into one simulation. That would be enough bioelectrics to keep the machines alive, continuous electricity, and people's brains, as long as they're plugged into that Matrix simulation, 7 billion people or so, that's going to keep the machines going.
Every moment of every day, your heart is having a conversation with your brain. Every human heart, around the heart, is a field of energy. 5 to 8 feet, 2 to 3 meters diameter. And this field of energy can be measured now in ways that make it very useful to us. The Institute of Heart Math has designed equipment that will help us to measure this field. Every moment of every day, your heart is sending signals to your brain, telling your brain what kind of energy to send to your body. Every moment of every day, there is a signal from your heart to your brain.
What we now know is
when I was in school, and when many of our listeners were in school, we were taught that this is a physical reality made of atoms, and our atoms would look like little solar systems. They were modeled as little solar systems, things in the middle called a nucleus, with other things orbiting them like electrons. And those days are long gone. We now look at atoms, rather than things orbiting around other things, we look at them as concentrations of energy in space and time, where there are no clear-cut things. Now, where this gets important is that scientists, and this is in the standard physics textbooks, this is no surprise what I'm about to say, is if you change the field of energy that the atom lives in, you change the atom. You can change that field electrically, or you can change it magnetically. And there are terms for the effects. The Zeeman effect, the Stark effect are well-documented effects of electrical and magnetic changes in the field that change the atom. Where, while it sounds technical and maybe not relevant, where it gets really relevant very fast is our hearts are the strongest bioelectrical and magnetic field generators in our bodies. Our hearts generate stronger electrical fields than our brains. They generate stronger magnetic fields than our brains. Our hearts are 5,000 times as powerful magnetically than our brains. And we hear about EKGs of our hearts. They're up to 100 times stronger than the EEG, the electrical information in our brains.
The human body generates more bioelectricity than a 120-volt battery and over 25,000 BTUs of body heat. Combined with a form of fusion, the machines had found all the energy they would ever need. There are fields, endless fields, where human beings are no longer born. We are grown. I came to realize the obviousness of the truth. What is the Matrix? Control. The Matrix is a computer-generated dream world, built to keep us under control in order to change a human being into this.
The recap, as I said, the machines salvaged people and put them into a matrix simulation so they could reproduce electricity to keep the machines alive. Because, as the Animatrix shows, humans sprayed the skies with dark smoke, Operation Dark Storm, to try and block off the sunlight to kill the machines off in the man versus machine war. So it's another interesting point to the Matrix simulation theory.
We have only bits and pieces of information, but what we know for certain is that at some point in the early 21st century, all of mankind was united in celebration. We marveled at our own magnificence as we gave birth to AI.
AI. An artificial intelligence.
A singular consciousness that spawned an entire race of machines. We don't know who struck first, us or them, but we know that it was us that scorched the sky. At the time, they were dependent on solar power, and it was believed that they would be unable to survive without an energy source as abundant as the sun. Throughout human history, we have been dependent on machines to survive. Fate, it seems, is not without a sense of irony.
Thus would man try to cut the machines off from the sun, their main energy source. May there be mercy on man.
Another interesting point in the Matrix film is in the movie there's programs perceived as people, but they're not actually people, they're programs. The Oracle and the Architect, for example. If you remember the Oracle, when Neo speaks to the Oracle, she has a personality, etc. But the thing is, what you have to realise is she's a program. They have personalities like people, but they're just programs.
Almost done. Smell good, don't they?
Yeah.
I'd ask you to sit down, but you're not going to anyway. And don't worry about the vase.
What vase?
That vase.
Just like the Keymaker, where the Merovingians men take away his key. You remember they say, look at his face, he looks just like a human.
What does it unlock? The future.
Anyone moves, and their brains are Jackson Pollock.
Drop it!
I see we're just in time. You didn't think we left that door unlocked by accident, did you?
Uh-huh.
I think he did. Look at his face. It's just like a human.
As the Keymaker is also a program. Therefore, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference between programs and real people in that Matrix simulation. And there's a reason why in the film they point that out. Why they point out the Oracle is a program, why the Keymaker is a program. But they have personalities and they look like real people. You know, they don't act like robots with robots, etc. You know, they have personalities, they talk, they look like everything like humans. And, you know, there's a reason why that was pointed out. So the question is, how would we know the difference between a program and a real person in the Matrix simulation if the technology in the Matrix of personalities is so advanced that programs can easily be deceived to people as real people and not programs? Another question is, in this Matrix theory, are we living a fabricated new version of the 21st century in the simulation? As I said earlier, Keanu Reeves, aka Neo, he's in the dream he's thrown back into the 20th century, where in the real world it's actually close to the year 3000. And as I said, that means we would be reliving the 21st century, but a fabricated version in the simulation. As you see in the Animatrix, it says artificial intelligence appeared in the 21st century. And that's what we're also seeing now. Early 21st century, we're seeing artificial intelligence, robots, etc. Already appearing, which to the theory is why are we actually living a fabricated version, rewritten history, and this is why we're seeing artificial intelligence appear right now. No different to as the Animatrix shows. And also it says on the Animatrix, society fell to vanity and corruption, which we're seeing now in politics. You know, so artificial intelligence appearing in the 21st century, plus vanity and corruption in politics, as I said, as we're seeing now. It's the question is, are we reliving fabricated history in that theory in this simulation?
Welcome to the desert of the real. We have only bits and pieces of information, but what we know for certain is that at some point in the early 21st century, all of mankind was united in celebration. We marveled at our own magnificence as we gave birth to AI.
AI? You mean artificial intelligence?
In the beginning, there was man, and for a time, it was good. But humanity's so-called civil societies soon fell victim to vanity and corruption. Made the machine in his own likeness.
Oops, pardon me. Coming through.
Nice one.
Thus did man become the architect of his own demise. But for a time, it was good. The machines worked tirelessly to do man's bidding.